Let's talk about the query function, and it is probably the most powerful function in Google Sheets. And if there's one thing you learn in this course, then I really think that the query function is probably the one that should be. It's the most powerful function, it's the most useful, and it replaces a whole bunch of other functions if you learn to really wield it properly. Essentially, what it actually does is runs the Google Visualization API query language across your data. What the heck does that mean? It means that you essentially can manipulate your data and analyze your data using a SQL, a structured query language type syntax. So if you've ever worked with databases, then this is kind of like using a database language inside of Google Sheets to summarize your data, to aggregate your data, to filter your data, to sort your data, that kind of stuff. And it's just an amazingly powerful little function. You can sort of doing these incredible things with your data. And so it's really worth learning. It's really worth spending the time. And this lesson, we're going to run through some basic scenarios or use cases using this set of data here, which is the top 50 buildings in the world. We're going to look at how we can just pull out different aspects of this table and summarize it in different ways. So as a first step, let's actually just give this a named range to save us highlighting it every single time. So let's highlight it once, data, named ranges, and we're going to call this buildings. And that way, whenever I want to refer to this table, I can just type in the word buildings in my query, and I don't need to worry about referencing it every single time. So let me start with the most basic query of all. We simply type the word query, and now I can reference buildings, and you see it highlight every single time. So let me start with the most basic query of all, which is almost just type the word query, so that saves us having to reference. Now I can reference buildings, and you see it highlight every single time. The second argument is basic query of all, which is almost just type the word query, so that saves us having to reference. Now I can reference buildings, and you see it highlight every single time. Query. That's the basic query, which is always tells the query API how to reference buildings. They say highlight every single what we want to do. That's the basic query, which is always tells the query API how to reference buildings. They say highlight every single what we want to do. That's the basic query, which is always tells the query API how to reference buildings. They say highlight every single what we want to do. That's the basic query, which is always tells the query API how to reference buildings. They say highlight every single what we want to do. That's the basic query, which is always tells the query API how to reference buildings. They say highlight every single what we want to do. That's the basic query, which is tells the query API how to reference buildings. They say highlight every single what we want to do. That's the basic query, which is tells the query API how to reference buildings. They say highlight every single what we want to do. That's the basic query, which is tells the query API how to reference buildings. They say highlight every single what we want to do. Let's talk about the query function, and it is probably the most powerful function in Google Sheets. And if there's one thing you learn in this course, then I really think that the query function is probably the one that should be. It's the most powerful function, it's the most useful, and it replaces a whole bunch of other functions if you learn to really wield it properly. Essentially, what it actually does is runs the Google Visualization API query language across your data. What the heck does that mean? It means that you essentially can manipulate your data and analyze your data using a SQL, a structured query language type syntax. So if you've ever worked with databases, then this is kind of like using a database language inside of Google Sheets to summarize your data, to aggregate your data, to filter your data, to sort your data, that kind of stuff. And it's just an amazingly powerful little function. You can sort of doing these incredible things with your data. And so it's really worth learning. It's really worth spending the time. And this lesson, we're going to run through some basic scenarios or use cases using this set of data here, which is the top 50 buildings in the world. We're going to look at how we can just pull out different aspects of this table and summarize it in different ways. So as a first step, let's actually just give this a named range to save us highlighting it every single time. So let's highlight it once, data, named ranges, and we're going to call this buildings. And that way, whenever I want to refer to this table, I can just type in the word buildings in my query, and I don't need to worry about referencing it every single time. So let me start with the most basic query of all. We simply type the word query, and now I can just reference buildings, and you see it highlights that full dataset orange, which is the one we just named, so that saves us having to reference it. And the second argument, if I actually click to just open out, let's expand the helper, you'll see the second argument is the query. That's the language that tells the query API how to manipulate our data. So we tell it what we want it to do. And the simplest of all is just to write the word select. It always starts with select, which is the instruction of, which data do you want me to select, literally. And then star just gets everything because we're not specifying a column. And star just pulls back all of the columns. So this is going to return the whole data set, this select star. So it's the most basic. When you enclose this query language inside of the quotation marks, and then I have a comma, and the final argument, which is optional, is whether you have a header row and how many header rows you have. So in my case, it's one, because I have this one header row that I've included in my buildings. If I'd not highlighted that row, then I could have put 0 and said I had no header rows. And you can also use you can set it to be -1 and let the query function just figure it out automatically. So if I hit enter now, it's going to bring back the whole data set for me. So what was the point of that? Well, the point of that was just to introduce the syntax, obviously, but now we can go ahead and start to modify this one and take a look at what this is actually doing under the hood. So let's say now, instead of all of the columns, we just want to select specific ones. And what I'd like to do is just return the list of buildings and their heights. So that's columns B, let me close that now, columns B here and column E. So if I type them in and hit enter, you'll see that now it just brings me back the name of the building and the height of the building. Let's add in the year it was built, and we would do that by comma F. And that just brings in the building. We can just actually we can still format the data. Now what you'll notice is this data is just part of a formula at the moment. So if I tried to if I said actually the height of this one needed to be changed to 1750, for example, and I type that in, then it will break the formula, because this formula here needs to expand into whatever space it needs. And if there's anything that prevents it from doing that, like a cell that's got some other data in it, it's going to break and give you this reference error. So the array result was not expanded because it would overwrite the data in I11, which is this one here. If we delete that, then it comes right back. So once you've used a query, if you then need to do some work, or other people want to do some work on it, and you think that people might start typing in over the top of this, then you should go ahead and turn these copy and paste special and turn them into values rather than just leaving them as a query function. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's now take a look at all of the buildings where they were built before 2010. So all of the older ones, like the Empire State Building, for example, we want to find out all of the buildings that were built before 2010 and see how many there were. Sorry, before the year 2000. Let's go with that. And so what we'll do is we'll select B, E, and F still, and then we say we're going to apply a filter, and we use the word where. That's the filter word. And we say, select these columns where this condition is satisfied. And the where is one of the keywords that determines that tells the query language we want to do a filter. And there's a link below this video to explain more about those different keywords, what they are, and run through all of these examples as well. So this will move quite quickly, this video, but go ahead and check out those links to figure out more. So I'll hit enter now, and there we can see it's now just pulled out all of the buildings that were built before the year 2000. Okay, so let me show you another one. Let's take a look at, let's add back the country. So B, E, D, E, and F, and just include that now in our query. And we'll also get rid of this condition. We'll do a different condition in a second. So we'll bring back all the buildings, the countries, the heights, and let's now just filter again. Let's do a second filter and another filter example, and just filter on United States. So what we'll do is we'll say, select those 4 columns where, and we reference the original column. So where D, not the new column here, which is I, we're referencing the original column, where D equals, and then I need to put a single quotation mark, type in the word United States, which matches how it's written in this column. So there, for example, and then another single quotation mark, and then hit enter, and that will bring back just the buildings from the United States. So that's the same, what we're doing is the same as if we'd had a filter across the top here, dropped it down and just selected United States. So that's what this construction is doing. At the moment they're sorted from highest to lowest, so let's order them in terms of oldest to smallest. So what I do for that is I'm going to be using the same data set, so we don't need to change our filters that we have so far. I simply come in after the United States and I'm going to say order by. And this is another keyword, order by here. And it's me telling the query language how to sort the data. And it follows on, the order of these is really important. So the select comes first with the columns, then the where condition, the filter comes next, and then the order by comes after that. And we're going to order by F, and we're going to do ascending. So we're going to start from the smallest to the largest. So we'll have the oldest ones first, and there we go. It's going to put the Empire State Building first, and it's going to sort them now all the way through to the latest one. We can also change it from ASC as ascending to DESC, descending, and that will just show me them in descending order from the newest to the oldest. Now let me also say, if you want, that it's more traditional to write these keywords in capital letters, in uppercase rather, and so if that helps you to understand that these are keywords, then feel free to follow that convention. I often don't, probably because I'm a little lazy on that front, but it's if it helps you to write them with the uppercase, then go for it. It still works, and that's the traditional way of writing those SQL code. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the top 5 buildings. So let's see what that would look like. So we'll say select B, D, E, F, and then let's just get rid of the whole filter and the sort that we just had, and just leave them. We've just got the 4 columns, but we've got all 50 back. And let's just say we want to get the top few now. Then we can do that with using a word called limit. And we can just say limit 5, and that will just bring back just those top, and that will bring back just those top 5. So that's the word limit 5. And you could have also done a where clause and said where the height is greater than 1,800, for example. Now, this is where things get a little more technical, a little more interesting, and this is something that would take me probably an hour or more to teach properly. So we're just going to fly through it, show you an example. I'll try and explain it as best I can, but it's going to take practice. So try this out. If it doesn't immediately make sense, just keep trying, read about it, and it will eventually. So let's clear out the limit there. And what I'd like to do is to select the country this time. In fact, let's just start with just the country and show that. So it's got all of the countries there. So that's just essentially bringing back this column. Now, what I'd like to do in this example is to count how many buildings each country has. So China, for example, has 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, 3 there, a couple there. So China's going to have a large number of buildings, 10, 20 plus buildings in this list. The United States had around about 5 or 6 we saw, and the United Arab Emirates have a number of very tall buildings in the world, and Malaysia has a number of tall buildings in the world. So what I'd like to do is get a count of the buildings for each of these countries. So the way we do that is to say, let's select D. So select the country. Then I want to count. And it really doesn't matter now necessarily which column I'm going to choose here. I'm just going to choose one of the other columns that, provided it's doesn't have any gaps in it. So we can choose, let's just choose column B here, and it's going to count the building names. Like I said, it doesn't actually matter which column essentially, it's just going to count the column for me. And so it's going to select the country, and then it's going to count how many things are in this country. Now, to make that work, what I need to do is group on column D, and I'll show you what I mean in a moment. If I just hit enter now, you'll see it gives me the error. And if we have a look, it'll tell me that I can't mix. It says add column to group by or aggregate D. And what that means is I can't have an aggregated metric here. So I've counted B, which is going to summarize it, shrink B down to a count, and then I've left D just as it was. It doesn't make any sense. SQL can't have a whole column and a single number in the same select. So what I need to do is say, okay, well, group by D, and what that means is count B for each individual unique member of D. And if I hit enter now, you'll see what it does is it goes ahead and actually just lists the unique countries and then counts how many rows of data there are for each of these countries. So that's the group by, and that comes after the select. Now we can go ahead and sort. So let's instead order by, now by, and this time we do want to order by the count of B, and we want, so that's this column here that came in, and we want to order DESC. So descending has the 4 to DESC, ascending was just ASC. And this time now it'll put them in the correct order for me. Now, if I want to use a where clause, I can do that. And what I do is just stick it in front here, in between the select and the group by, so it comes before the group. And we'll say, let's say where F is greater than 2000. So all the buildings after the year 2000. If we actually flip that round and say, well, let's look at a count of all the buildings before 2000 and who had the most then you'll see that's still China, Malaysia, and the United States, but the United Arab Emirates, for example, had no buildings built before the year 2000, so that's quite interesting. One last thing I want to show you during this quick fly through is, let's take that where out for now, just so we have a bit more data to look at, is if I open this column out a little bit, you'll see that it's called count building name. It just all it does is it takes the name of the original column and puts the word count in front of it with a lowercase c. It just looks a little bit ugly. What we can do is at the very, very end of our SQL clause here, I can write the word label, and I can say label count B. So I have to, again, specify which table of my new data set I'm talking about, and I want to then label that as the number of tall buildings. And again, I have to use single quotation marks to wrap around whatever the heading is. So number of tall buildings. Again, you can see there I have a single quotation and another single quotation inside of my query clause. Hit enter, and then it's changed that label now to the number of tall buildings. And so you can see what it's done essentially is this is effectively doing what a pivot table might do, but we've done it with one neat formula, and then this data is more accessible than it would be if it was in a pivot table on a different sheet, that kind of thing. And the other nice thing that makes query so powerful is that this buildings here, the data you feed into query, can be the result of other queries, of array formulas, of filter formulas. There's a myriad ways you can combine the query with other functions to make some really powerful and effective data analysis methods in your sheet. So spend some time with query function. Again, start with the data set a little bit like this. Try to make heads or tails of what the query function is doing. And then when you get the hang of it, you'll find yourself reaching for the query function whenever you're doing your data analysis. So thanks for watching, folks. And that is the query function.